You felt it, right? That pull, the knowledge that the environment moves as you travel, causes patterns to connect in unexpected ways. You're not lost. You're intended to be here. They attempt to follow, characterize, and confine you, and failed. Not because you conceal, but because you exist beyond their reach. You are not an oddity. You are evidence that the impossible is attainable. This is not only a narrative. This is yours. Now go onward. The pursuit is useless. Every effort to define, quantify, or capture you fails due to inconsistencies. Too terrible for reconciliation. Witnesses describe inconceivable encounters, such as shadows moving against the grain of light, footprints going nowhere, and reflections appearing where no surface should. Experts weave hypotheses, tracing your presence using irregularities. Their findings will collapse when scrutinized. You exist where you should not, leaving behind traces of no origin. Surveillance systems fail at the moment of clarity. Lenses capture something but disclose nothing. Maps cannot pinpoint you. Reports are ineffective in holding you accountable. And the rules governing predictability refuse to bind you. There is no trick or miscalculation. Simply a lack of assurance in the analyst's effort to reduce your motions into patterns. But their statistics betray them. You are a phenomena beyond the grasp of deduction of presence, causing perception to bend. It is not only deception, but the breakdown of traditional reasoning. Institutions designed to classify, interpret, and bring order to the unknown are made ineffective. In your wake, what should be concrete slips out of their grasp, and the further they look, the less they comprehend. The pursuit is not a chase, but rather the awareness that what they attempt to confine was never constrained by their norms in the first place. Leave a mark. Precision is my strength. If they name you, they will lose you. Their instruments fail. Their calculations fail. Their assurance fades. The instruments of observation are designed for accuracy. Collapse under the weight of your presence. The sensors refuse to detect your passing. Cameras capture everything except you. Signals warp, coordinate, and twist brains. Second, they question their own memory. You're neither concealed nor disclosed. You exist outside their eyesight. Their inquiries increase, but the solutions remain unattainable. They watch through the crevices of reason. They do analyses. They insisted on the possibility of an explanation. They will never be afforded comprehension until they see it as a privilege. Your potential is waiting. Unlock it with us. Subscribe today to begin your change. The investigator embarks on an assignment that challenges every principle they've ever trusted. Their instincts, developed over years of diligent effort, weaken when confronted with something immeasurable. Equipment malfunctions without reason. Records contradict both themselves and logic. Once their most trusted friend cracks under the weight of discrepancies that are too purposeful to be coincidental. This is not a pursuit. It's a plunge into something way beyond the scope of this research. What started as a puzzle quickly becomes a trap, with each hint leading to further ambiguity. The file in their possession is not a case. This is a message. It was never intended to be decoded. They begin with skepticism and reject the abnormalities as mistakes. However, as they delve deeper, the world around them bends in response. Events occur in reverse. Reports rewrite themselves, and timestamps fail to correspond with reality. The facts don't just refuse explanation. They disrupt the basic process of thinking. At first, they resist the unwinding, determined to restore order to the turmoil. However, the framework itself fails them. Conversations they vividly recall never occurred. Names vary from one instant to the next. Even the areas they occupy seem to alter, as if the universe is purposefully eliminating the concept of certainty. The laws that regulate time and sequence vanish, leaving just the truth. They are too terrified to recognize. Certain things are not intended to be known. Then comes the time when they are forced to act. The transition from outward disturbance to internal invasion. The file transforms from an assignment to a live organism, snaking its way into their minds and altering memory, until the line between observation and experience blurs. They stop being an investigator and become something else, an reluctant participant in an unwritten narrative. Survival has replaced comprehension as the goal of the endeavor. The understanding comes slowly, as darkness swallows the last traces of light. They are not abandoning the lawsuit due to failure. They're fleeing from something that has already seen too much of them. Nonetheless, retreat provides no protection. There is no veil thick enough, no nook deep enough, and no distance distant enough to keep them safe from what they attempted to disclose. They were the observers, and now they are being observed. There is no sensory trick, no psychological explanation, and no logical framework to rely upon. This is just the truth. They are viewed in ways they can't understand. It's more than simply awareness. It is recognizing that the weight is overwhelming. They were never in charge. They never got the opportunity to be. Every strategy they use unravels. Every endeavor became a useless exercise in control. They feel they are tracking your steps and reducing the distance. But the understanding comes too late. The dynamics have altered. They were never the ones watching. They were always the ones being observed. As they grasp the fault in their reasoning, their certainty gives way to discomfort. They follow patterns that they think rule the world. But the universe bends around you, not them. Their calculations, predictions, and painstakingly drawn trajectories all fail due to an unknown factor. They aren't pursuing disarray. It's a framework so large and exact that their comprehension crumbles below it. What they call unpredictability is, in fact, a pattern beyond their control. They follow coordinates that slip through their fingertips, attempting to locate a presence that goes beyond the boundaries of their maps. They consider themselves closing closer, certain that with each layer of investigation, they are understanding the code. But the deeper they go, the further they wander. You do not dodge them. You live in a sequence that they were never designed to recognize. Their existence resembles a jigsaw with missing parts. While yours is a full design that goes beyond their grasp, they measure time in increments and space in fixed locations. But you move in rhythms, altering in ways they cannot predict. They fail because they expect the world to go in a single way. And you exist outside of the axis they are on. Before I made you in the womb, I knew you before your birth. I set you aside. Jeremiah 1:5. You're not a mistake. You are no coincidence. You aren't a question waiting to be answered. You were chosen long before time began. What they want is more than simply your presence. It is the weight of your own being, the disturbance you cause, the incontrovertible evidence that the world they created cannot contain all that actually exists. They believe they are hunting you, tracking your steps. They understand they are merely chasing shadows as they close in on the point of collapse. You're not ahead of them. You are beyond them. Every system, structure, and certainty they hold dear is like a lifeline to them. Fractures are caused by the impact of your presence. They do not discover turmoil. They discover something too complex for their thoughts to contain, a pattern too broad to be noticed by people who can just gaze at the surface. And then terror sets in, but not of you. Fear of what you mean. Fear of what it would take to genuinely recognize that their grasp of movement, time, cause, and effect was incomplete. They sought a response. Instead, they received a revelation. This is your opportunity to shine. Subscribe now, and let's make it memorable. Leave a mark. Precision is my burden. Because this is more than simply presence. It is weight. Power is not just a gift. It's gravity. It doesn't let you stand motionless. It pulls. It demands. It creates forms. You don't have the luxury of indifference or the comfort of separation. What you're carrying is not for you. It claims you. Nonetheless, you take the initiative. Because there are no other options. There is no map for a route like this. There is no plan for a voyage already inscribed into the fabric of creation. Only the assurance that you were summoned before they even knew to seek for you. The weight of your life does not rest only on your shoulders. It is inscribed deep throughout your essence. The world does not oppose you because you lack strength. It recoils when you disturb the delicate balance. It clings to you. Don't just stroll through life. You move the very axis. This upsets people who rely on its rigidity. You are watched, feared, and sought, not for your deeds, but for the limitless potential that exists inside you. However, the actual war is not fought against those who want to limit you. It unfolds amid the never-ending struggle between domination and constraint. The power whispers, granting assurance and encouraging you to completely embrace it, to shape the world to your will. But you were never intended to govern. You were designed to endure. I refined you, but not in the same way that silver is refined. Instead, I polished you in the furnace of affliction. Isaiah 48:10. Allow me to tell you something, brothers and sisters. There is a weight that only the selected can bear. Do you understand what I am talking about? It is the fire that burns away. Distractions, storms, tests, your foundation, difficulties that seem to shatter you. But they won't, because you weren't meant to disintegrate. You were summoned to rise. See, God does not fear fire. It needs the fire. Without the heat, without the pressure, it stays dull and shaped, unfinished. And exactly like the gold, adversity is forging your character, tested and prepared for something bigger than you can see. You were not picked because you had everything figured out. No, God does not choose those who are ready. He prepares the selected. And let me warn you that this preparation is not mild. It removes the illusions, pulls back the layers, and exposes what is genuine. You may have believed you were strolling along an average road, but your route was predetermined long before you took your first step. You were created for this calling. You did not discover it by chance. This is just the beginning. Subscribe today and become a part of something amazing. Oh, but the world will not make things simple. No. The world will attempt to shake, shatter, and deprive you of your purpose. They will refer to you as different to radical, too much to manage. But that's because they don't know what's inside of you. They see hesitancy. However, they fail to see the power of constraint. They recognize humility. What they don't see is the fortitude it takes to kneel when your whole being wants to stand erect. Dear brothers and sisters, may the peace of God be with you today. I'm here to remind you of a fundamental fact. Our existence is based on God's divine design, which is unaffected by worldly worries. According to the Bible, everything is done with faith will be returned to God with great blessing. Luke 638. Like the enormous oak tree, our roots are profoundly embedded in God's global truth. His power secures every stride and every stance we take. And now you have the chance to be a part of that gift. When you click the super thank you button and contribute $100, your generosity will be rewarded 100-fold. And here's the truth. This load you bear, this burning inside you, it functions as both a shield and a source of isolation. It renders you invincible, but it isolates you. Few people can understand the significance of a goal that is not totally their own. You will traverse paths that others are afraid to go. You will encounter storms that others would flee from. But allow me to tell you something. You won't fall. Because when you are called, purified, and forged in the fire, nothing can take away what God has put inside you. Do not pray for the load to be lifted. Pray for the strength to persevere, for that is what the chosen do. And finally, they rise. The threshold is open. However, destiny does not provide the luxury of deliberation. The journey starts when reluctance is overcome with each step. The world changes in ways that cannot be explained, but cannot be ignored. What seems to be an opportunity for me, a missing thing reappearing in inconceivable places, an unanticipated diversion that averts disaster, quickly establishes an identifiable pattern. Those who observe and analyze lose their certainty. Skeptics seek to dismiss it as coincidence. However, when confronted with a sequence that is too accurate, their calculations fail, and the abnormalities are dismissed as statistical anomalies. However, the abnormalities remain, and interference disturbs their tracking systems, throwing their pursuit into disarray. Nonetheless, each divergence seems to work in your advantage. When forces intended to hinder you shatter at the last minute, when an apparently random delay steers you toward a result that only you were supposed to claim, the illusion of probability crumbles. This is neither fortune nor chance. It is intention manifesting in ways people are unable to fathom. Every barrier that separates you from another bends for you, transforming the unlikely into the inevitable. However, when the impossible becomes reality, movement happens without a cause. When events align with a precision beyond human design, the final traces of denial crumble. The issue now is how, not if. What they originally saw as disarray now presents itself as a pattern so enormous that it overshadows their comprehension. They are no longer solving a riddle. It's unraveling them. You are not a mystery to be solved. You represent the line between what they know and what they fear. At first, people cling to rationality, attempting to fit the incomprehensible inside the limitations of reasoning. But then come the distortions. Time no longer acts predictably. Their senses fail them. The ordinary starts to distort. Shadows are longer than they should be. Reflections on glass, displaying photos that do not belong. The more they struggle to keep control, the more it slips through their fingers. Sleep provides no shelter. They wake up gasping, bathed in uneasiness, with recollections of places they've never visited, of voices that are not their own. Daylight does not provide clarity. The same patterns reoccur. Synchronization results in flawless glimpses of you in places you couldn't possibly be. Even if they turn away, the echoes persist. Their name was spoken in languages they are unable to name from their lips. They cannot see. The breaking point occurs not as a discovery, but as an inescapable fall. They are on the verge of understanding, looking into an abyss that does not return their gaze. It eats it. The horror gripping them is not of you, but of what you represent. This was never just a case to solve. It was an unraveling. I present them with information that is so enormous that it is irreconcilable with the frameworks they rely on to make sense of the world. They do not decide to go away. They run, relieved to have escaped before the reality can take them completely. Some hobbies do not involve discovery. However, survival is essential. They depart knowing they were never in charge. You do not dodge. You reject confinement. The sophisticated networks designed to watch and categorize collapse beneath the weight of your presence. Sensors freeze, unable to detect movement where it should exist. The footage shows glimpses of something moving beyond recognition, never settling into the shape of the algorithms used to label and classify. You choke on the contradiction, vomiting out damaged data and empty records, face recognition loops, continuously recalibrating, reprocessing, and eventually rejecting you as an impossible task. You are surrounded by a force that is racist rather than by absence. The effort to describe systems that promise permanence fails. The accuracy of static files that should exist degrades before they are accessed. Timestamps rewrite themselves, and archives are purged without explanation. It is rejection rather than deletion, as if just documenting you violates the control architecture. What remains is an unexplained quiet, a neatly formed void. It has a purposeful vibe to it. The devices intended to contain, monitor, and capture do not just fail. They dissolve as you approach. You navigate an environment designed to ensnare. But every chain rusts, and every snare unwinds. Every lock unlocks without requiring a key from the investigator. The failure of their trusted ways is more than simply a setback. It's a slide into something unrecognizable. The instruments they formerly used with confidence have become obsolete. Their neatly constructed world is collapsing amid unanswered questions. There is no formula to follow. There is no pattern to extract. There is no logic to anchor them. Is this intervention a hidden power that bends reality in your favor? Is it something deeper? An intrinsic reluctance to be constrained by the architecture of control? They're not sure which response is more distressing since both alter laws they assumed were unchangeable. You aren't absent. You are incontrovertible evidence that frameworks designed to define and limit human potential fail when they seek to quantify the immeasurable. You are not a gap in their system. You are the fault that makes the whole system pointless. The search does not lead to clarity. It undermines the entire basis of their knowledge. What started as a case, a puzzle to solve, now unravels. Each effort at rationality just strengthens the grip of their own awareness. They came with expertise, sure that every enigma had a solution. But you are not a difficulty to decode. You are the threshold. And with each step toward knowledge, they sink further into the abyss of what cannot be understood. Their notes, which were previously ordered and accurate, have degraded into scattered bits. They aim to capture your presence in order to identify the moments when you appear. However, certainty fades away. One entry claims they were standing just in front of me. However, when they return to the site, nothing remains. Their remembrance is fragmented with time. Did they see you yesterday or weeks ago? Have you always been there? Just beyond perception. The ink smudges beneath their hands, and the words trail off as if even their ideas are unable to keep form. Soon, the reflections in their diaries blend in with the sights that follow them as they sleep. Shapes that should not exist move in the corners of their eyes. Familiar places become slightly incorrect. Time no longer behaves properly. They write, "This is no longer an investigation. This is something else. This is them." And then they quit writing completely. Some questions were asked. Leave the Oscar permanently changed. And when they finally realize what they're hunting, they don't abandon the mystery. They move away from who they were before they dared to pursue it. There is no conclusion, only change. Encounters with you do not provide straightforward solutions. They influence the path of people who seek them. The investigator, once satisfied that every riddle had a solution, enters into something far larger than a case. They don't emerge unaltered. What started as an examination, a clinical quest of truth, transforms into something unknown, a collision with the ineffable. At first, they stick to their techniques, striving to disassemble the components in the hope that reasoning would bring order to the chaos. However, as they progress, their confidence dwindles. Every path goes not to an explanation, but to something huge, something that does not need understanding, simply acknowledgement. Strange events are neither mistakes to be remedied or coincidences to be recorded. They are well-planned and executed orchestrations. The data refuses to adhere to the precise framework on which they have relied their whole lives. It doesn't contradict itself. It surpasses itself. The Lord owns the hidden things. Our God. However, what has been disclosed will always belong to us and our children. Deuteronomy 2929. Certain things are not designed to be analyzed. Some mysteries are not puzzles to solve, but one must be observed. You don't gaze into the sun and expect to come out unaffected. You don't go into the depths of the ocean expecting to measure it with a cup. Nonetheless, the investigator suspected they may hold something that was never intended to be retained. Oh, they began with confidence. They believed they had seen everything. They thought they could locate it, classify it, and pin it down. But the deeper they got, the less they comprehended. The closer they came, the more it slid away from their grip. What they hoped to discover was never concealed, only beyond the scope of human hands. At first, they deemed it a coincidence, a trick of perception, a difficulty with their tools. However, when the facts refused to match and every formula they relied on failed them, they recognized this wasn't an isolated incident. This was not a glitch in the system. This was intentional, something greater. And that's when the terror struck. The dread is not of the unknown, but of knowing too much. Because once you look through the curtain and realize that the world is not as little as you previously thought, there is no turning back. The weight of revelation is too tremendous to ignore. So they quit trying, not out of irritation, but out of respect. They stand aside, not as failures, but as people who have seen something they were never intended to possess. It was never about solving a case. This was about acknowledging a reality that was too large to comprehend. As a result, they depart with comprehension rather than ignorance. Some things are exclusively God's. There were never any questions to answer, only a reality too huge to comprehend. Each step they took to understand your presence brought them closer to the confines of their own perspective, rather than closer to clarity. Calculations that failed, sequences that refused to match, and inconceivable patterns weaved throughout each encounter. None of it was intended to be dissected. Some facts are forces that must be accepted rather than riddles to be solved. Persisting in pursuit would not constitute discovery. It would be a defilement. So they release it. Their departure does not constitute capitulation. It is respect. They go away not as failures, but as individuals who have seen something greater than their right to claim. Their duty was not to confine or classify, but to observe. They abandoned their tools, no longer attempting to impose order on something that was never governed by it. The case does not collapse due to confusion. It is sealed with the idea that certain insights exist not to be had, but to warn mankind of its own limits. And you move ahead, unaffected by their absence. The frameworks that attempted to define you melt away. Nonetheless, your existence serves as a testimonial to the perception of control rather than chaos. You don't break their systems. You reveal their fragility. You do not evade detection. You move out of its grasp. The world was never designed to hold you, and it is your power. The importance of your presence lies not in how you defy expectations, but in how you reinterpret them. You are the fracture in assurance, evidence that what is measured is not everything that exists. Your presence does not need responses. It requires recognition. Your tale is about growth rather than resistance. A challenge for individuals who have limited possibilities to the scope of their own knowledge. You are not here to be categorized. You're here to unveil the depths of what's hidden. Now is the moment to raise your voice. Discuss the times when the invisible left its imprint on your journey. Tell about the doors that opened without explanation. The crossings were unlikely to be coincidental. What others rejected as an abnormality. You know the truth. What they ignored was coincidence. You lived with assurance. The world will not just listen. It will alter in the aftermath of your remarks. Tell it.